Whenever it comes to any React project, we might have obviously used this technique known as destructuring. Well, it is a process of extracting values from an array or an object. If you are trying to extract the values from an array, then it is known as array destructuring. Similarly, if you are trying to extract the values right from an object, then we call it as object destructuring. And in this video, we are about to look into what array destructuring is and how to use them in our React projects. Therefore, without any further ado, let's get started. Well, here we have a starter React project up and ready. And before getting into the destructuring logic, first let's try to understand why do we need to go for using destructuring in our React projects. And to explain that, we have a simple example right over here. We have a button which is placed right at the center, and we have made use of few Tailwind CSS to get with the design. And inside the onClick event of this button, we have passed the handler myFunction, which is a custom defined function which you can see right over here. And inside this function, we have a name list which contains the values Alice, Bob and Charles. And we are trying to extract those values and assign them with these variables first name, second name and the third name. And below which we try to console log the same. And you might obviously know what the result is going to be. As soon as you click this button, you see we get the Alice, Bob and Charles being printed in the console, which is stored in these variables first name, second name and third name respectively. Here we haven't used the logic of destructuring. Well, now let's try to modify the same code with the help of destructuring logic. And the only change here is, instead of trying to assign them individually in 3 different variables, we can optimize this code and write them in a single line with the help of destructuring. Now by using array destructuring, we will be able to extract the same values and assign them to the same variables first name, second name and third name. So this is going to be the basic syntax of how to use array destructuring. So what we are trying to do is, we try to extract the values of first and assign them to the variable first name here. Similarly, the second name is going to be extracted and assigned to the variable second name. And third name Charles is going to be extracted and assigned to the variable third name here. So this is basically the syntax of array destructuring. In the right hand side, we have the name list, which is an array actually. And in the left hand side, we try to extract them and assign them to those variables. This in turn is going to give us the same result. As I click this button, you see we have the same expected result, Alice, Bob and Charles, which is actually stored in this first name, second name and third name. And we basically go for using this destructuring logic in order to make our code more concise and easy to understand. Now with this syntax, we now observe that it is going to be an array destructuring logic. Well, similarly in React we have a hook which basically uses this array destructuring logic. And it is commonly used in almost all React projects, and that is nothing but the useState hook. So as you can see here, we have the same kind of syntax being applied to the useState, where the first is going to be the variable and second is going to be the dispatch function. And if you head over to the useState, you see we have a variable and a dispatch function. Since it is wrapped inside an array, we try to extract that with the help of the array destructuring logic. Now with this we can infer that useState is the best example of array destructuring. In this example, we had 3 different name values stored in this list, and we try to extract all of those 3 values in 3 different variables. If you want to extract only the value present at index 0, how do we do that? If we are going to use the traditional way of extracting values with the help of index, we go for using square bracket and pass in the index of 0 here. But in array destructuring, the process is going to be very simple. If you want to extract only value at index 0, you can ignore the rest of these values, or you don't want to extract them. On the other hand, you can just simply pass in only one variable which automatically extract the value at index 0. And this time, if you try to click this button, it prints only the value at index 0 because the same is what we have extracted here. We haven't passed additional variables to extract and store second and third results. So it will try to extract only the value at index 0 and assign them to this first name variable. Now let's try to update this name list by adding 3 more values. Now we have totally 6 values in this name list. And what I need is, I need to extract the values present at index 0 and at index 1 in separate variables and try to assign the rest of all other values in a common variable. So I will totally have 3 variables. One will store the value at index 0 and second is going to store the value at index 1 and the third variable is going to store the rest of all other values in the name list. So let's see how we can do that with the help of array destructuring. And the process is very simple. With the previous knowledge, we know how to extract the values at index 0 and at index 1. With this syntax, we try to extract the value present at index 0. Similarly, to extract the value which is present at the next index, we can go for creating another variable called the second name. Now we are able to extract the value at index 0 and 1 and assign them to individual variables. And in the third variable, I need to extract the rest of all these values from this name list. And to do that, we need to get the help of the REST operator. So as a React developer, you might obviously know how this spread operator is going to work. So we can go for using this REST operator. And here I am going to define the third variable called other names. Now by doing so, we are able to extract the values of first and second name and assign them to these variables and extract all other values in this name list to this variable called other names. Now let's try to console log all these 3 variables. Let me refresh this page, and if I click this button, you see we're able to extract the value at index 0 and index 1, and the third variable other names is going to extract all other values of this name list. That in turn is actually an array. And if you want to display these values just in the same way like Alice and Bob, you can go for using the REST operator here inside this console log. Now by doing so, if I click this, you see we are able to print the values in the array and not the array itself. So this is one smart way of extracting only the necessary values from an array and assign the rest of other values to a variable with the help of REST operators. Well, in the previous example, we tried to iterate over this name list in a more sequential way. We tried to extract value at index 0, then moved over with index 1 and so on. But how do we extract the values which is present in between this name list? Say for example, if I want to extract the values which is present at index 3, but I don't want to extract the values present at 0 or 1. I only need to extract the value present at index 2 or 3 for example. Let's see how to extract the value present at a particular index with the help of array destructuring. And in this case, I only want to extract the value at index 2. I don't want to extract the value at 0 or 1. I don't want to go them in a sequential way. I directly want to jump over to this second index and try to extract that particular value. And to do that, the logic is very simple. Since you know the index at which you want to extract the values, you can simply skip these values at index 0 and 1. Just by doing so, you are able to skip the values at index 0 and 1 and directly access the third name here. Now if I refresh this page and click this button, you see you are able to skip the first and second name and directly move over to the third name in this list and print them in the console. Well, so far now, we discussed about how to extract the values from an array and also how to extract values present at the particular index in an array with the help of array destructuring. Now let's try to extend this a bit forward, where we try to assign default values during the process of extraction in array destructuring. Say for example, here let me get rid of these 3 values in this list, and we have updated the name list where we only have 3 values. We are going to use the same logic, but this time basically I am trying to access the 4th name in this list, which is actually not present, but let's see how it behaves. Now I am sure that we only have 3 values in this list, but during array destructuring, I am trying to skip all those 3 values and trying to access the 4th name, which is actually not present in this list. If I refresh this page and click this button, you see it prints undefined, which is an expected result. But in a real application, I don't want undefined to get printed anywhere in my React project. So if you are not sure, whether we are going to have the value for this last name or not during the process of extraction, we can try passing a default value here. In this case, I am passing a default value called name not found. If there is no value present at this particular index to be extracted, it tries to assign that with this default value. Now if I refresh this page and click this button, you see, instead of undefined, this time we are able to get the default value which is name not found. Now by doing so, we are able to handle error conditions during array destructuring. Alright, till now we discussed about the process of array destructuring, how to extract the value. Also we discussed about how to pass default values during array destructuring. With this we pretty much know the basic logic and the working principle of array destructuring. Now let's look into how to use array destructuring while passing values to a function. And in this case, we have updated the code where inside the onClick event of this button, we try to call the combine name function by passing the value names. And this names is going to be a list which contains values Alice and Bob. And here inside this function, we are trying to console log the value of both Alice and Bob just with the help of their indexes. So we haven't used any destructuring logic here. So let's try to optimize this code by using destructuring while passing the arguments during function call. And the change is simply instead of trying to directly get the values, we try to extract them during runtime. And how do we do that? Since it is going to be array destructuring, we can go for using square bracket. Just like the word style, we can make use of the first name and second name. And here inside this, we can directly console log the first and second name. Here we are able to extract the values during runtime, which is passed as an argument to this combine name function. And also if you want, you can pass default arguments to these variables. So this is how we can perform array destructuring with function parameters. In this example, we try to pass default value for this second name argument alone. But you can also try passing default values to the entire list itself. You just don't need to assign them individually. Rather, you can update the code like so. Here inside the function parameter itself, you can define default value list. For the first name, let me give the default value as the first name itself, which is a string value. Similarly, for the second name, it is going to be second name. So the default values for the first and second name is going to be their respective string values. And by doing so, you don't need to individually assign default values for these parameters. Instead, you can directly create a list which contains the default values. In this case, even if I not pass the name props to this combine name function, it is going to print the default value. If I click this button, you see, since I haven't passed any values as a props to this combine name function, it is going to take the default values, which is the first name and second name, which we are given right over here. If you are going to pass the values, it is going to take the values of the props, or if it is undefined, it is going to make use of this default value list. Here we have another example where we have a name list that contains an array of array values. So we have a linear set of array containing the values Alice and Bob, and inside that array we have another array which contains the value Charles and Danny. Now let's see how we can extract these values individually with the help of array destructuring. We are going to have the same function called combine names. In this function parameter, we are going to extract the first name and skip the second name, which is Bob, and directly try to extract the value Charles and Danny inside this variable nested array value. And inside this function, we try to console log the first name and the nested array value, which has been extracted as a process of array destructuring. And if I refresh this page and if I click this button, you see we are able to get the first name and the nested value of Charles and Danny is extracted to this nested array variable. So this is one simple example where you can also go for using array destructuring while working with nested arrays. So this is all about the basic syntax of how to use array destructuring in your React projects. Hope you find this video useful. If you do so, consider subscribing, and I will see you again in the next one.